I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. Is honey the best food on earth?
In one word answer, yes. If you don't have your health, what do you have?
You are a functional medicine doctor.
Join us as we blend modern and ancient wisdoms to be well now. Honey is essentially a whole food group. Let's put it that way.
Today on the Be Well Now podcast, we're going to be eating honey. We're going to be talking about how good it is for you. Obviously, it tastes amazing. I'm Nick, the Curious Patient, your Dr. Ron Dummar, functional medicine doctor with a background in Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and physical medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk about honey today is because literally there are so many components of honey that people just do not understand. They don't realize there's amino acids. Amino acids are the basic building blocks for proteins. There's hydrogen peroxide. There's phenols. There's a whole host of things, antioxidants. There's antiseptic and antibacterial properties. You can use honey for so many different things that we're going to talk about today, and we're so excited to go over this with you.
I just got a scoop.
It's about ready to drip.
I just got a scoop. It's going to drip. All right, we've been doing this podcast weekly now for more than a year. And if you like what you're hearing and you want to support the podcast, it's going to drip, but I'll get it. Don't worry. Please subscribe. Please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. I want to ask you, Dr. Ron, you told me about a year ago that if you were on a deserted island and you could have one food for the rest of your life, it would be honey. And it blew my mind because it tastes good, right? You think something healthy can't taste good. We got drip number one.
There it is.
Number one. I'm going to get to it.
Yes, honey is the food of choice for me. If I'm deserted on an island, that was the one that I want. Honey would have everything that I need. Give me a beehive. Give me honey. Give me bees. And let's hopefully have a plush plant life with lots of pollen that they can pollinate and bring the phenols back to the honey into the hive.
Not all honey is created equal. So I want to get into the chemistry behind it, but I like to do kind of stuff people can use at first. So if I'm looking for honey out there, I'm into health, I'm into wellness, I'm listening to this podcast. What do I want to look for either in my local community or at maybe probably the most natural food store I can find to get the right honey for me?
Yeah, so really you're looking for raw, local, organic honey. That's what you want. You want to make sure that it's not pasteurized or superheated, anything like that. And also, there are certain filters that can be used when they filter the honey because you'll end up with like the comb and you'll have this waxy type of film on it, and you want to filter some of those out so that you separate the wax from the honey composite itself. And if you use too fine of a filter, you can actually prevent some of the pollen or some of the phenols or antioxidant properties from getting through into the honey itself. So it needs to be kind of a wide gauge filter. And most of your companies that do raw organic honey products, they do use those filtering methods. But you can look at the website or search up the company and see, because they'll explain what their filtering methods are.
So ideally raw, organic, and unfiltered?
Not unfiltered. Oh. So they need to be filtered. Just you want to, so sometimes they'll use a really, really fine filter and it'll actually reject too much. Does that make sense? And so what you want is more of a loose or a wide filter.
All right, you mentioned hydrogen peroxide. So yes. I'm thinking about cleaning wounds, right? Can we talk about the chemistry of honey? Because I want to know what is the why behind why it's so good for me? Because all I think about is this has a lot of sugar. There's no way this could be good for me.
Yeah, when you get the honey bear,
amped up I am?
When you get the honey bear on the shelf, right? That's what people are thinking about. They're like, oh my gosh, it's just straight sugar. And the reality is most of your honey bears on the shelf are. It's a product. It actually is dyed a yellow color. Many of these, so be careful. Look on the product. If it says anything but raw honey on it, you do not want to consume that honey.
So what's more important, like it being local or it being raw? Because there's so much branding and marketing on these labels. It's really hard to tell.
Yeah, well, ideally, the reason you would want it to be local is because the bees are visiting the local plant life and the local pollen, the local allergens, let's say it that way. So what the bees are doing is they're giving you a little bit of those pollens, which is what we call in the medical world immunization, right? If we're giving you a little bit of your surrounding, you're immunizing yourself. This is also why little kids, they put absolutely everything in their mouth. Okay. That's also because the oral cavity is actually more developed. It's more highly developed and sophisticated when an infant is born than anything else. So they can actually perceive the world better with their tongue and their oral cavity than they can with their eyes ultimately when they're first born. Which is kind of fascinating because you would think of that, and this is just a little caveat, but you would think of that almost like a snake, right? How a snake perceives its entire world with the tongue.
Yeah.
And you'll notice infants will put everything in their mouth. They're often sticking their tongue out, trying to perceive their world. And that's because of how highly developed the tongue and oral cavity is in an infant. That's
are you trying to get
cool
any of this honey, or are you just going to watch? You don't have
I'm going to get some of the honey.
But you have things to tell people.
I want to tell people some of the incredible benefits of this honey first, though, too. And you mentioned how it has hydrogen peroxide in it. And the hydrogen peroxide we use in homes in general, like as a cleaner or as a debridement method, right? And so we want to clean wounds and different things like that with hydrogen peroxide. Well, honey, the bees actually make into the honey itself, they make in it hydrogen peroxide. So it helps with its shelf life, helps keep it stable. And you also want to make sure that when you're purchasing a honey, that it's not, or even, let's say if you're harvesting your own honey, but you want to make sure you don't harvest it too soon, because sometimes if you harvest it too soon, there's still extra moisture in there, and that honey can actually go bad. So if you don't harvest it, or if the company doesn't harvest it at the right time, then the honey can go bad. Okay. But once it gets to a certain point, the hydrogen peroxide that's in it acts as essentially an antiseptic. And so in a variety of different medical situations, they'll actually use honey and apply it to wounds.
What?
To help with tissue regeneration and healing, because it's got antioxidant properties in there. It's got tissue regenerative properties. It's got, we mentioned before how it had amino acids, which is protein synthesis, so it can help develop the proteins that are necessary to regenerate tissue and flesh. So it's an antiseptic, right? And it's a tissue regenerator. So it is absolutely something that you could use as a wound healer.
And I know that you imagine like certain tribes in Africa, right? They get studied in the modern age, and or just, a previous version of ourselves in a different age. Like if you were going about your day and you found honey, you probably just went for it, man. You probably loved it. You weren't like, oh, there's too much sugar in this. You'd be like,
you would just
go for it, right?
Yep.
So I don't know. I just think there's something beautiful about something that's sweet and also good for you. Phenols, we talked about in our previous podcast. I'll link that down below. But we talked about phenols, flavonoids, antioxidants. But phenols in honey, what does that mean? Why is that good for me?
So phenols and the phenolic content essentially functions as an anti-inflammatory, and it functions like an antioxidant, or these antioxidant type compounds. Okay, so we have free radicals that find themselves in the body. Free radicals are essentially like a single oxygen molecule. It's what we see that causes the rust in the world around us. So it can actually break things down, right, in the body. Well, we're supposed to be breaking things down, but we're also supposed to be rebuilding. So we want as much of the rebuilding capability and minimizing the breakdown as much as possible. Okay, and so phenols help to do that. Phenols play a critical role ultimately in that oxidative stress. So you may have heard that term, oxidative stress in the body. And this is where we have that breakdown or the rusting of our cells. And the phenolic compound that's in honey will actually prevent that from occurring. So it helps keep your vessels healthy, your vascular system, your blood flow, helps the cells themselves to maintain integrity.
And I mean, they're talking about immune system, heart health, a lot of positive effects. Can I just talk about like, when can I eat honey? How much can I have? How should I consume it? I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but like, again, I want to get to you're sitting out there, you're 10 minutes into this podcast. Like, you want to know, how much can I How many spoonfuls of this can I do? You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
I'm on spoonful 3 here.
Good quality honey is very difficult to overdo. And I would say, so typically what I do is I like to do a spoon of honey with some of my tea in the morning, or I'd like to even just, I'll go home sometimes and my kids will have the honey pot and they'll have a spoon. And I'm like, okay, is that your first one? I hope so. But the idea is that if we can utilize honey more as our candy and our sweet throughout the day, our blood sugar regulation is going to be so much better. So a lot of the sweeteners that we have, or the sweet things that we consume are laden with really potent processed and refined sugars that have no other mineral content to buffer their insulin spiking.
Okay.
Right? So boom, we have a load of sugar that goes straight to the bloodstream because there's nothing like buffering it. So then insulin spikes significantly. Now, the question is an insulin spike a problem? And the answer is actually no. An insulin spike is actually a very good thing on occasion. But if it's happening repeatedly over and over and over again, it becomes so overwhelming for the body that the cells develop a resistance to it. And we call it insulin insensitivity. So then the cells almost become inflamed where they can't because they've been poked too many times by the insulin trying to get the glucose or the sugar into the cell. And that getting glucose into the cells is what actually gives us energy, right? Helps us feel awake and alive and alert.
Yep.
And so if we're not getting the glucose into the cell, we're going to feel fatigued. We're going to feel tired, worn down. The mitochondria is not functioning properly. So many processes within the body are shut down as a result of this. So we have to make sure that our insulin spikes occur, but that they don't occur so rapidly or so frequently. So the point being there that you can consume honey almost, if you were not consuming the processed sugars, the processed breads and carbs and things like that, honey would really not be a problem for you to consume multiple times a day.
Is honey like a carb? Is honey carbohydrates? I don't even know what these things mean. Honey does say carbs.
Honey does have, yes, if the sugar content would be considered the carbohydrate, but it also has protein content, has the amino acids in it. It has the phenols and the polyphenols, the antioxidants. So again, we're saying that honey is ultimately like a complete food.
Anti-inflammatory, flavonoids. Mm-hmm. I don't know what flavonoids are, even though we did a whole podcast on them. But it has some flavonoids in there, right?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
How does honey work to be anti-inflammatory?
So honey, the way that honey works is essentially to generate the production, like with proteins. So it'll help the body produce the proteins that it needs to produce the compounds that are necessary to fight the oxidative stress. Okay. And so it can actually signal within your body to have antioxidants like glutathione produced. You can even have, again, just the phenol component in the honey itself will donate an electron. So it pulls away the oxidation stress. The oxygen molecule itself, it'll bind to it. So now it's not floating around rusting something else. Does that make sense?
Not really, but I heard you say it, and I'm sure I'll listen to it, and it'll make more sense.
Yeah.
So, I'm just enjoying this honey, and I'm like,
the honey's delicious,
I hear it's like, like peanuts on the phone, like blah, blah, blah. All I hear is like, honey's good for you. Eat more honey.
You're like, I'm going with the honey's good. The honey's good. That's what he said. So,
but it's good for your blood, isn't it?
Yeah, honey.
So tell me why this is good for my blood.
So the interesting thing is that honey content, the research has shown that honey has increases the ability of the body to produce hemoglobin. Well, here's another interesting thing is that if you want oxygen saturation or oxygen concentration throughout the body, you want this delivered to the cells, you need hemoglobin because hemoglobin is what binds the oxygen in the cell and delivers it to the rest of your body, to the capillaries and to the cells of your body. So it increases your ability to produce and to make hemoglobin. So if you have an increased amount of hemoglobin, you can deliver more oxygen. So it's very simple that way. The other thing is there are a variety of other components within honey that benefit blood and blood product and actually blood production.
Okay.
So what we've found is that certain research has shown that consuming honey actually has ameliorated people's anemia. So people who have low blood count or they have anemic type of state or conditions, this can be ameliorated by actually consuming good quality honey.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it's good for your blood. It's good for your blood vessels. It's good for your cells. It's good for your blood sugar. Right? A lot of people are really concerned about consuming honey, or they'll be told you can't have honey. And I would say if you're consuming the honey bear off the shelf again, that's a honey. Probably if it doesn't say raw organic honey, then you shouldn't be consuming it. Or if you're not getting it from your friend's honey or from their hive, then you shouldn't be getting it.
This says raw, but not organic.
Yeah, raw, and that's raw honey. This is one that you said was you were looking for an option and you didn't have.
Yeah, I didn't have any
local or anything right now.
Anything local from Utah, so that I think somewhere in the Plains area. But usually I try to find something in Utah because you talked about you're borrowing the wisdom of those plants in your own ecosystem, and that's good for your health.
Exactly. It's an intelligence that is of the plant that has learned to survive in the ecosystem in which you currently reside.
Yeah.
And so why not borrow that intelligence? They've been sustaining life for millennia, as far as we can tell.
Bees do what to produce honey?
What do they do to produce honey?
Yeah, isn't this like bee vomit that I'm enjoying right now?
So they go and collect it, right? And they collect pollen and everything from all the trees and the plants, and yes, and then they're essentially evacuating those contents into their hive. And so
good.
Yes, and we can maybe get into actually bees producing honey another time.
Okay.
But today, let's talk about maybe even some of the common uses that people might want to do.
Just spoonfuls of it?
Yeah, you can just eat it. You can just eat it raw, straight if you want.
Can you imagine the PR stunt that Mary Poppins pulled on like a spoonful of sugar? Why not a spoonful of honey?
Yeah, well, because it wasn't a major product, I guess, at the time that needed to push by the.
Come on now.
I don't know.
Let's talk about honey though. What? How do you like incorporating it into your?
A nice simple way.
So a nice way that.
A nice simple way to incorporate honey is you think about when do I want something sweet?
After a meal.
So that's when you go to honey. So you go, okay, well, honey, some people say, well, it's almost too sweet for me. Okay, fine. So get some fruit, some strawberries, bananas, cut them up, maybe some blueberries, drizzle some honey over it, and then eat it. Delicious. Really good. Quality sugars. Complex carbohydrates is what those all are. The honey, the fruit. So you're not going to have an overly significant spike in your blood sugar, and you're going to have a controlled, because the food itself is pulling nutrients up out of the ground, right? And it's delivering those nutrients to you and actually subduing the spike. It's subduing the spike of glucose or the insulin spike by having minerals in there, right? And the honey's doing the same by all the other components that we talked about with honey that are in there. So that's one thing that you can do. People like to use honey. I like to recommend honey as a natural sweetener because it's like, look, if I'm going to use a sweetener, a sugary, sweet, refined sweetener for anything, why not just, replace that with honey? It's going to be a much better option for you. Other thing is, at my house, my daughter loves to bake. And when we first started, because I have 6 kids, I've wanted to maintain some level of normalcy. I didn't want them.
I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah, well, I didn't want them to feel like they were going to school and they were complete rejects or nerds, so to speak. Right? I didn't want them to feel like that.
Why would they feel like that?
Well, because
you're out there in.
Well, because 20 years ago, I remember a family that was in our community in the area that I grew up in, and they only used honey, didn't eat any refined white sugar. I mean, this is way ahead of their time. I mean, this is probably even 30 years ago.
Or this is like the way that it used to be.
Right. Well, but 30 years ago, even, it's like it was looked at as kind of odd.
Because 30 years ago we'd be right in the
a microwave and everything.
Yeah,
it's like we were right in the microwave dinners, boxed goods.
Around 1990.
Yeah, 90s.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was like I feel like the golden era of I just think of all the junk food I ate.
Fast foods, everything's great. Yeah, it's like just everything in a package.
Look
at
more
how
convenient,
awesome this
save
is.
time. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's people that weren't doing that, people that were actually, kind of living off the land. It was this. You were looking at them like, what? And we didn't have maybe as much awareness or acceptance or knowledge of that. And I won't say that they were mistreated. I don't think it was ever like that. But I do remember distinctly hearing certain things or feeling certain vibes as a child.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that family's kind of odd, right? And
that family with the Dummars.
I must say that they probably think that about me. That's what I think. In my mind, I'm like, people probably think that I'm odd, that our family's odd. I don't know if they do. I might be wrongly assuming that, right? But because of that, I wanted to make sure, that my kids knew, you know what? Yeah, I mean, if you want white refined cane sugar, here it is, right? It's almost in every recipe. Yep. Calling for white cane refined sugar, right? So my daughter really started getting into baking, and she would use white cane refined sugar, and I would not eat any of it. I just wouldn't eat it, right? And that was okay. I loved that she was making it. I loved that she was developing her talents and gifts and things like that too. And I would ask her, what'd you make this with? And then she would tell me, and I'd be like, oh, okay. And then I wouldn't eat it, right? And then
subtle parenting.
Yeah, well, and then then one day I was like, what did you make this with? And she was like, oh, I used honey, Dad. I was like, oh. So then I ate one.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that's delicious. It changed the flavor a little bit, right? It does change the flavor, but it was delicious. And now anytime she makes something, it's usually honey. That's her go-to sweetener now in baking. So it absolutely can be used in baked goods. And again, you have to play with how much do I do the same amount as sugar? Well, it comes out a little sweeter. So I would say you probably need about half the amount of white cane sugar for honey that you need, right? So you'd use half a cup if it called for a cup. You would use half a cup of honey. That's about how it goes. And you're going to have to play with it. If you like the sweetness of it, if you think it needs to be sweeter, well, then you'll have to play with that a little bit. But most of the recipes called for white cane sugar or brown sugar or something like that. And now we're in a time too where a lot of people actually we're provided recipes that call for things like raw organic maple syrup, which is a really good thing, or honey as well. Another place that you can use honey is in salad dressings.
Okay.
So people often they'll put, again, cane sugar or brown sugar in their salad dressings just to sweeten it a little bit. Well, again, it's a sweetener. It's the best sweetener. It's a food group. It's a food all on its own, and it helps your blood, and it's an antiseptic. Why would you not want to use honey as a sweetener for your salad dressing?
I'm starting to feel guilty. This is spoonful 4.
You're doing good. We're proud of you, Nick.
Thank you. But it does sound great.
If he has a crash, which he won't, but if he has a crash, we'll notify you next time.
Indeed. Indeed. Yeah,
Anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, you suggested this great tea where I chopped up some turmeric.
Yes.
And some ginger.
Little
put
ginger,
half a lemon
turmeric,
juice in there.
Little lemon.
And then I set it on like a low boil for like 10 minutes.
Simmer it.
Yeah. Then I simmered it, and then I poured it over a strainer into my cup. And then 2 giant spoonfuls of this.
Then you put some honey in.
It tasted so good. I gave it to Penny, my daughter, and she loved it. You know, she took a couple sips before bed, but like the honey made it all go down.
Yeah, again, the honey makes it go down for sure. Just a spoonful of honey.
Soothing a sore throat. How could I use honey for that?
So honey is the consistency, the viscosity is a little thicker, right? And when you put it into your mouth, it does kind of coat the oral cavity. It begins immediately to be absorbed into your body. So it's taken up by the cells of your oral cavity and even your nasal pharynx, your throat. So it will coat your throat. Now, if you put, say, our herbal medicine with it, our Cool Coat Throat, and you mix that with a good spoonful of honey, that's going to coat it even more significantly, right?
So I could drop a little of that in, they maybe fold the honey over itself and say, hey guys, just have some of this.
Yeah, you could do that. Exactly.
I don't think at this age, at 7 and 8, I would be deceptive about it. I'd say there's some medicine in here.
Right.
From Dr. Dummar. They know you.
Yeah, you tell
like,
them.
it's the herbs, but the honey will cover it up.
Exactly. And you just confirm to them it's good, it's healthy for your body, and, you know, it's going to taste sweet, but there's a little bitter in there too. And the fact of the matter is, food that we eat in life has sweet, it has sour, it has bitter. I mean, these are the natural way. This is the natural way of eating. We have various flavors in our food. And for us to think that food should be unilinear in its taste is absurd.
I think you should have a spoonful of some honey before this episode's over.
Yes. Okay. I'll have
so what do you got here?
So this is this one is a raw unsaturated. This is all Utah honey. This is a raw, and this one's actually unstrained. So that's pretty cool.
What does that mean? They didn't strain it at all?
So they didn't strain it. So they just let all the contents go. So this one will have a greater tendency to cloy up.
Okay.
And to clump up. Let me see if I can get this open here.
If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, just know we do have a YouTube channel as well that we're putting all these podcasts on, and this is probably the size of.
Yeah, look at
how
that.
giant is this?
Yeah.
Tub of honey.
What is this?
That looks
one?
more like peanut butter.
This one is 5 pounds.
Okay, I'm rocking the little jars. You got the big 5-pounders. I just know that life is better with honey in it.
We promise not to eat all 5 pounds today.
How was it?
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah. But I mean, this thing right here, let's say that you have seasonal allergies. Okay. Now, the reason you have seasonal allergies is because you go out into the wild and you have pollen that you're breathing from the trees, the dust, the environment. You're taking it all in.
Yep.
There's a little creature out there that actually wants to help you. It's like nature's immunization. It's called the bee. It makes this honey. It flies around to all these little pollen dissipating plants, and it collects that pollen. It collects that debris, and then it flies back. It makes its honey, puts all that pollen in the honey, and then you consume it. You're immunizing yourself to your environment. This is the number one original immunization.
That's like a vaccine, but in a good way.
Yeah, I didn't say vaccine. I said immunization.
I know.
But
We don't get to say we don't say the V word around here in the natural health world.
But
No,
yes,
it sounds amazing though.
This is your nature's flu shot. How about that? Put honey with a little bit of apple cider vinegar.
Really? You can combine them?
Nature's flu shot right there.
How do I do that?
So you want to put in get a cup, 8 ounces, 16 ounces, whatever, and then put, I'd say about 4 to 6 ounces of hot water, and put a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and then put a spoonful of honey. Stir that in.
ACV.
That's immune booster right there.
I like apple cider vinegar. I'm a daily consumer of it.
Boy, that's good.
Is that good?
You can feel it just coat your whole mouth, right?
Your whole disposition changed.
Oh yeah.
Is that a word? Disposition?
Disposition, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
My kids are trying out for the Mary Poppins play, so I'm feeling, inclined to use these big words of the English age.
That's how the sugar helps the medicine go down. That's where that came from.
Yeah, that's where that came from.
So relieve your allergies, right? Boost your immune system, treat your wounds, soothe your sore throat. What can't honey do?
Satiate your desire for a little sweet treat.
Exactly.
Boom. This is my favorite episode ever of the Be Well Now podcast. Thanks to everyone for joining us.
That's pretty high compliment there, Nick. That's good.
I mean,
hopefully it's their favorite podcast.
Ozone therapy was a good one.
You like that.
Just selfishly, when I get to do stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, and then when you did acupuncture, that was nice too.
Yeah.
You got to get
all right,
what
should we do to Nick next? That's the question. That's what he wants to know.
That's what the people want to know.
Tell us. We'll do it.
Hey, let us know what you think of this podcast. Comments are huge for us on the YouTube channel. And if you made it this far,
Maybe we should do cupping. Maybe they want to see cupping on you.
Do you do cupping on patients?
Oh my gosh, do we do cupping?
I never see anyone walking out with any big welts on their back.
Oh gosh, yeah. So like 15, 20 years ago when we started our practice, people would come around and ask if I wanted to be involved in their little raffles and things. And I would put in free cupping treatments. Problem is nobody knew what it was. Nobody ever took me up on it. But then Michael Phelps showed up on the pool side with the cups all over his back, those cup marks.
Yeah.
They started calling me off the hook. Do you do
Seriously?
cupping? Do you do cupping? I'm like, yeah, we've been doing cupping for 10 years.
This guy's a pioneer. He's a pioneer.
So here we go.
Before
Cupping
it's cool,
next.
it happens here.
That's right, man.
Namaste.
Namaste.
What a sweet episode.